The 90s was the last simple era. It was before smartphones and before the constant notifications. Life moved slower then. It felt slower. It felt easy. You had to literally be present in those moments. That simplicity is what so many adults are craving again. That's what millennials and, you know, some Gen Xers are craving now. 80s and 90s babies like grew up during the biggest tech shift ever. 80s and 90s babies literally went from landlines to iPhones, from VHS to streaming services, from outside until the street lights come on to TikTok. That jump has created a unique generational identity, and it has been an adjustment. And I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or not, because we were at a time in the 90s growing up that literally, like, you knew once you went out the door, you better not come back inside until the street lights come on. Or you had somewhat of a security blanket to stay outside and play until the street lights came on. You didn't have to worry about, you know, people being weird, anything like that. And I feel like the kids today are missing that. They're missing that going outside as soon as the sun come up on a Saturday morning, and your mom and them not letting you run in and out that house, letting their cold air out. That's a cultural difference and shift from what the kids today are having to grow up with and do. We would literally walk and ride bikes throughout the neighborhood, throughout the city. You'd be 15, 20 blocks away from your house, and everybody stood in a group. You didn't explore neighborhoods and parts of the city that you otherwise wouldn't on your own as kids, but everybody stood together. You drunk out the water hose. You know, the community, we shared everything. We go to the store, somebody buy a couple cold drinks, a couple juices, somebody buy some snacks, some chips, some people buy candy, some people buy pasta. Everybody shared everything. Like, it's a cultural difference that today's kids don't know about. Like, riding bikes in the neighborhood, or parents will be looking for kids, like, oh, where's so and so at? And if you saw a bunch of bikes in somebody's lawn, you knew, okay, all the kids are over there. It was just different. It was just different. Literally, growing up with landlines, not having a smartphone, times felt simpler. Like, it felt it felt like innocence almost, like, and we know that things were happening in the world, and there were things going on, but as kids, like, we weren't exposed drastically all the time to things that were going on that were like, adult issues and just negative and bad. Like, we were kind of, I don't want to necessarily say shielded, but we were protected from that. You know, the comfort of 90s culture during uncertain times is the reason why we crave nostalgia. It's the reason why we are reaching back, looking at, old TV shows. Like, when the world feels chaotic as it does now, people naturally reach back to the last time they felt safe. And for a lot of people, the last time they felt safe was when they were kids, when, again, life felt simple. And for a lot of us, that was the 90s. And, it was just a different era. It was just a different environment. The air felt different. Life didn't feel so heavy, and for many people now, they're going back and watching their favorite old Cartoon Network shows, their favorite Nickelodeon shows. Saturday morning cartoons was a big thing. And even finding old snacks and old foods from like that era, like, you know, the stuff we grew up on, pizzas and school pizzas and donuts and milks and things like that. People are finding those things just to have a piece of nostalgia, a piece of safety. And the kids that they don't know what that's like because they've grown up in so much chaos with everything in their face, you know. The 90s just felt comfortable. And like as a 90s kid, I can even stretch and say like the early 2000s like felt comfortable, you know. And for me, growing up in New Orleans and having to deal with Katrina, I feel like after 2005, life didn't feel it did I didn't feel that comfort anymore. After Hurricane Katrina, it literally was like a shift. Everything started to feel different. So like again, I would say the 90s and early 2000s up until 2005 for me is when things kind of shifted. You know, now for some people that'll be 2001 and you know why. However, you know, life goes on and a lot of us are holding on to or trying to find something that literally just make us feel safe. As simple as that. The 90s was lit, man. It was lit. Families was tight and close together, family reunions, everything. Like people got together and you know, you got on the grill, just a regular random Saturday, Friday, you know. And even now when it comes to like what we watch and what we listen to. The 90s music still hits harder today than anything that's currently out, anything that's really come out within the past, what, maybe decade for the most part. There's very few albums currently in the last decade that are top tier. In the 90s, you had bangers and hits from everybody. You had real R&B groups, real vocals. There was storytelling in the music. They were using live instrumentals and instruments. So like, you know, you felt it. You felt it. Like the soundtracks of our childhood feels like an emotional home. Even the soundtracks to a lot of our favorite movies and TV shows growing up as a 90s baby is better than a lot of the music that's being put out today. The soundtracks to some of our favorite childhood movies are better than a lot of the music today. That's what I'm saying. Like the 90s was just different. Like as a 90s kid, it just was different. The music, the soundtracks to our life, you know, our TV shows was better. You know what I mean? Like, and I think people miss that. And that's why so many people still can put on some oldies but goodies and just jam out and it just bring you back to a moment in time. And you be like, oh, I had no business listening to that. You know, it brings you back to this place and you just like start going down memory lane because it felt good. The music made you feel something back then. There's this shared childhood experience that has pretty much bonded an entire generation together. Remember, like something that the kids today would never know what it feels like. It's going into like Blockbuster, Hollywood Studios, Hollywood Videos, whatever, whichever one it was. But you know, going into Blockbuster and actually having to go and rent a physical movie, a physical VHS tape. You know, the cereal commercials were off the chain. We still remember what those commercials were like. You know, the Sega Dreamcast, AOL chat room. Excuse me. AOL chat rooms. Like it just was different. Like we didn't have the technology we had. We were literally thriving with the simplicity of what we had. We made the best of that dial-up internet. We made the best of it, you know, going on LimeWire and getting music when we shouldn't have been getting music off of that site, crashing computers moving slow. It was a time, man. And that's what people don't, a lot of, I feel like Gen Z doesn't understand when we talk about, you know, when we talk about the old times and stuff like that. It's not a dig at them, it's just a different lived experience. It's like we all lived the same moment in the 90s and early 2000s, even, in different cities and different states. We were all pretty much living the same life. You know what I'm saying? Like literally everybody was online while you creating CDs. That net zero internet wasn't hitting on nothing. You had the big box computer, and that was life. It was simple, but it was ours. And it wasn't until we got to a place where we are now that we're like, oh man, I miss that. I miss when literally the internet would take forever. You know what I'm saying? Printing maps on MapQuest, trying to get to where you got to go, because GPS wasn't on everybody, wasn't on a phone. That was a premium experience for people. We had to print out physical maps on paper to try to get where we were going. GPS was a luxury. It wasn't just on your Apple CarPlay, you know, anything like that. It was literally premium. So it was just different. Growing up before social media literally shaped a lot of our self-esteem. We were allowed to have awkward phases in peace. No cameras being put in our face a lot by parents. No pressure. No comparison culture. That freedom is something adults now realize they miss, and it's something adults now realize that children today don't have. They don't have the luxury of having those awkward phases in peace. They don't have the luxury of not having cameras thrown in their face every time they have some type of normal life moment. And part of that is to blame is because the parents who are, are our age, who are those kids that grew up in the 90s, they're not giving their kids that same grace that they had. And it's unfortunate. We were able to make our mistakes in peace. Nobody knew. And if anybody knew, it was very few people. Not, people not only in your city and state, but people across the country and an entire globe. Some of the kids today, most embarrassing moments are gonna live on the internet forever. We didn't have that. We were able to be awkward and live in the moment and deal with that stuff in the moment. And I think that shaped us as a 90s kid. We didn't have to worry about, having one bad moment in public and somebody literally standing in front of you with a camera and then uploading it for everybody to see. Back then, you had that moment and the people around saw that moment, and then it's like it never happened. It's like it never happened. And I think social media is an issue for a lot of the kids growing up today because they see what everybody else has, what everybody else is going through. And, they start comparing themselves, and that leads to a very dark place. That can lead to a very dark place. They don't have that freedom and luxury that we once had. Again, everything just felt so different, man. The food tasted better then. The early 2000s and the 90s, the food tasted better. Like you felt good, man. It felt good. And a lot of us rushed to grow up and get older. And I can't wait till I'm an adult. And now it's like nostalgia feels heavier the older we get. We're losing friends that we grew up with in childhood, grandparents, parents. A lot of us are raising kids, paying bills. Like we are literally the adults that we once looked up to. Like adulthood makes you look back with gratitude and softness now because we realize how good we had it, and we realize that those times are never coming back. We look back with that gratitude and softness and a little ache for the innocence we didn't know we had then. Because now, not only are we exposed to a lot more, we've lived through a lot of major events since 2001. A lot of major events and a lot of world things since 2001. And we realized the luxury we had as a kid that the kids today don't have. And lately, something that's going on social media is they're posting, and it makes your heart literally ache. It makes your heart ache. They're posting pictures of what it was like, you know, in the 90s, and people are posting like pictures of themselves in the 90s, and like just the visual of that seems so much simpler than times today. And they're showing their pictures to a song that just kind of grabs at your heart by the Goo Goo Dolls, you know, and it's Iris, and that song just kind of does something. It's so nostalgic, like it really just makes you sad. It's really sad, especially looking at today. Like everything, the price of living is astronomical. You know, food is expensive, housing is expensive. People are really out here struggling. And in the 90s, it felt like anybody could make it. The early 2000s, it felt like anybody can make it. Like if you did what you had to do, you can make an honest living and get yourself going. And now it just feels like people are just trying to hold on, you know? So to all my 90s babies, you hear me? I see you. To all the 80s babies, I see you. You hear me? Like, we grew up in the best era, the last simple era. And I ask you, to give grace to the generations that's coming up. They don't know what it's like to not be without social media and seeing everything all at once from all over the world. They don't know what it's like to not have a camera stuck in their face during some of their most awkward phases and moments. Give them some grace, as well as each other as 80s and 90s babies. You hear me? We have to give each other grace as well. But, I hope this video makes sense, and I hope it reaches the people that it reaches that need to hear it. Just remember like that the 90s was the last simple era, and it was the greatest era in my opinion. You hear me? So thank you for tuning in to another episode of A Quick Little Word Podcast. It's your boy Chris Wright. Be sure to check the link for all the descriptions. And I'm sorry, check the description for all of the links. Check out Facients.com, that's the merch. Be sure to copy something, as well as follow me on all my other socials and share this with somebody. Like, comment, subscribe. I truly appreciate you for tapping in and listening. And until next time, peace, love, and happiness.